about Vietnam. But these are not the harrowing, bloodletting stories of war. I leave that to people that are better qualified and did more suffering than myself. These are stories that are lighthearted and humorous. At the end of World War II, a German general was asked why he thought that the United States had done so well in war. And he said, war is chaos. And the American military practices chaos on a daily basis. So I draw most of my material from my book from chaos. In 1964, I was assigned a flying job in the Far East. And this was a time when the United States was fully committed to the mutually assured destruction principle with the Soviet Union. And it was called the MAD for an acronym, the MAD principle. There was quite a few accidents, 32 in all, during this period, all the way from the 50s up through the 60s. There was one up at Mars Hill, South Carolina, just 100 miles from here. It's called a broken arrow if there was an incident or accident with a nuclear weapon. Every officer knew that if you were involved in a broken arrow, it could terminate your career. So shortly after I had my assignment to the Far East, I got an assignment or additional orders sending me to nuclear weapons school. Now, I wasn't told why I was going to nuclear weapons school, because I was assigned to a war area that was fighting a war with conventional weapons. The thought actually occurred to me that maybe we were going to nuke Hanoi. You know, considering the debacle that Vietnam turned out to be, maybe that wasn't a bad idea. There's nothing that causes more hyperbole and paranoia than when the discussion turns to nuclear weapons. The class that we had was a secret operation. It took limited access with 2 access lists that were printed. There were armed sentries on all the entrances. And by the time I got into the classroom, I felt a little awed and slightly privileged to be there and studying America's weapons of mass destruction. The first thing I noticed was a bomb on the stage, an atomic bomb. And this thing was treated with such sensitivity that at times in the class I thought it might go off in the class. Our training included loading and unloading this thing on a special dolly that we loaded it on the back of a C-130. And it took a crew of 8 people just to load the bomb. It was a complicated thing. You even had 2 guys with little wheel chocks on the end of sticks that followed the wheels up into the airplane. And pilots stood on each side and supervised, and of course they accepted responsibility for anything that went wrong. Well, at this time I noticed that the bomb had a dent in the end of it. And this was a little bit incongruous because they were treating it with such delicacy, but it looked like a truck had backed into it. Well, about 3 weeks after I completed my nuclear training, operations called and said, we've got a mission for you to fly from Seward Air Force Base over to Fort Campbell. So when I reported to the airport, the operations officer says, hate to tell you this, but you're going to be hauling a nuclear weapon over there. Well, this caused a lot of anxiety, and we got all our paperwork out and started studying how to load and unload that thing. And our order said Sergeant McIntyre would meet us in Fort Campbell. We got to the airplane and all prepared to load and unload it, and it turned out that it was already loaded and strapped down. So we flew over to Fort Campbell and was directed to a cargo area, and we expected to have sentries with guns in it, and there wasn't anybody there but Sergeant McIntyre. And we opened the door, and he says, I came to sign for the bomb. And so we said, well, what about loading and unloading? And he said, well, I'll take care of all that, don't worry about it. He says, if you want to get something to eat, the officer's mess is closed, but you can go over to the enlisted man's mess and have lunch. And if you go down to base operations, they'll give you a ride over there. So we went to base operations. We were glad to get away from the bomb, to tell you the truth. And we were puzzled, though. And when we were leaving base operations, we looked over at our airplane, and we saw a truck back up to it and hook up to the bomb and snatch it off the airplane and tear across the ramp. And it was a crew of 1. So we went on over to the enlisted man's mess, and there sat the bomb in front of the mess. The truck still attached to it, and a crew of 0. We went inside, and we at that time also noticed that the bomb had a dent in it. So this happened to be the same bomb that we were using for training on it. So we talked to Sergeant McIntyre on the inside, and he said, that old bomb has been declassified for years. It's just a training tool. So my book is called Wheels Up, Sky Jinks for the Jet Age. It's got 22 stories in it. About half those stories took place when I was a pilot for Delta. It's got good reviews, and it just won an IPPY, National IPPY bronze medal. Thank you.